Firstly, I'll just run through the housekeeping. We're in committee room 1, which has cameras and picks up sound from the microphones in the ceiling. Cameras and microphones will track the person speaking during the meeting, so please bear this in mind with regard to background noise. Given this, I would like to remind members of a couple of things. Please speak clearly and don't whisper. Please keep other sounds to a minimum. Whispering, shuffling of papers and typing loudly on the keyboard are sounds that may be picked up by the microphones. Please be conscious of what you have on your screens. Although it is unlikely, the camera may pick up what is on your screen. And please also bear in mind that the ceiling microphones are sensitive and may pick up conversations in the room, including informal remarks. This last point is particularly important as we're live streaming the meeting on YouTube and a recording of the meeting will be available afterwards. We're not expecting a fire drill this afternoon, so if the alarm does sound, please follow the officers out of the building and gather in the cathedral grounds. Just check the live stream. Okay, the first item is election of chairman. Please can I invite nominations for election of chairman for this municipal year. We have received one indication in advance of the meeting, the current chairman, John Gilly-Ross, and it's understood that there is a proposer and seconder.
Thank you. I'd like to propose Gilly-Ross as chairman for the PFTC panel.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the chairman? Okay, the nomination of John Gilly-Ross has been proposed and seconded, and I will now put this to the vote. Is this agreed? Agreed. Thank you. John Gilly-Ross has been duly elected as chairman. Please take the chair.
Thank you, everybody. Hard to not repeat what I've perhaps said in the past, so that's probably a bonus for everybody as well. It is. I still think it's an honour to be chosen by you to represent. In this occasion, I don't know whether it's because I'm the only person who's put themselves forward, or whether you were pleased with my past performance, etc. I'll take the latter. I think anyway. There's a win. Okay, what I'd like to do as the first item, really, and I know it's not on the agenda, but it's a lovely hot day today. So can I ask all the panel members to make themselves comfortable in terms of jackets, ties, etc., if they want to do so? Yeah, and I'll probably be one of the first to do that. So while that particular element is in motion, while you make yourself comfortable, we then need to go through to the second item, really, which is to elect 2 vice chairs as well, or up to 2 vice chairs. We don't have to elect 2. There are positions for 2 vice chairs. In terms of that appointment, then we have 2 people who've put their names forward at the moment, and we understand that they have proposers and seconders, they are in alphabetical order: Councillor Plale and Councillor Ricky. Are there any other nominations that anybody would like to put forward? Okay, in terms of proposer and seconder, proposer and seconder for Ross Plale, I believe we have. Who is that? Ross Plale is not here today. He's.
I'll propose Ross. I'll second.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Councillor Rigby is proposing, and Councillor Ricky is seconding, and then the second person is Councillor Funky Ricky, and I'm happy to propose. And Lisa Castell will second that particular one. Okay, can I have a show of hands for the first person then, which is Councillor Plale, please? All in favour? Yeah. And then Councillor Ricky, please. That's very concrete. Do you want to say anything in particular? Too excited, really, aren't you? Right, thanks everybody. Let's move back on with the rest of the agenda, which is, I suppose I should say, that they're both been duly elected, Well done, congratulations. Right, membership apologies, substitutions. And we have some changes today. The May elections every year, it's always exciting, but not necessarily for the independent members. But it does, I actually look at it as a positive way, really. I think it's good that we have new people coming on to the panel. Everybody that attends the panel session has got a say, and they've all got a point and, if you like, a benefit of being here. So welcome to the new members. I'll try and remember some of them. We've got Councillor Hartstein over here, and we've got Dan. I think you're you this time round. No, you're not actually. Sorry, Dan.
I don't know, easy. I just turn up. Love your chairmanship.
Yeah, but did you actually fail the height test as you know? As we already had. Okay, so
That was, yeah.
all right, moving swiftly on from that mistake. Councillor Dobson, welcome, and we've got then. Remind me.
Stamp.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Stamp, who's a surprise. I've known Councillor Stamp for some years now, but we was expecting her colleague, Jeanette. So welcome to you both anyway.
Councillor Charles.
Yeah, and Councillor Charles as well on the end, who has already been briefed that he's too tall to be here. Yeah, because he's taller than me, and most people are. Okay, but welcome. Yeah, hope you enjoy these sessions. And I hope you find that it's comfortable to participate and you know, carry out the appropriate challenge that we're here to do of the Commissioner. We are very lucky, and I usually say this, so bear with me, those who have been to these before. When I say we, I mean Essex panel is very, very fortunate that not only do we get to challenge the Commissioner, but we can watch the Commissioner direct or challenge both the chiefs at the same time. It is unusual, or not common, should I say, for the chiefs to be at these sessions. Yeah. But we've always found that they're very, very welcome, but more importantly, they add a different dimension. But remember, we're not here to deal with operational aspects. The only thing that is on the operational front is, if you like, being volunteered through the Commissioner. Other than that, I don't think we've ever had an issue in terms of straying into areas. Sometimes we nudge it a little bit, but you know, that our remit is non-operational, as you know. The second thing I'd like to remind people is that very easy to get into or drift into party politics, probably in the meetings that you normally attend. And I'm looking really at the elected members as opposed to Lisa and I. Please leave the party politics at the door. We very seldom have that interfere with our meetings. I'll pick up on it if I notice it. I think since 2012, I probably can only remember 2, maybe 3 occasions where you know somebody was bringing party politics into it. Yeah. Please just then carry on as we have done in the past and enjoy the sessions. And on that note, I think we better move on. So, we have received apologies. Some of these have gone through already, but Councillor Playle has sent us apologies, and we, of course, Councillor Sue Dobson, who is substituting. We've got Councillor Garnett from Harlow, and substitute is Joel Charles. Councillor Harris has sent his apologies, but there's no substitute there. Can't attend, thank you. Councillor Terry from Southend-on-Sea has sent his apologies. Councillor Lapland is substituted by Councillor Rigby, and Councillor Savage from Castle Point has sent his apologies as well. Any others? Oh yes, and the substitution that we were referring to earlier. So thank you for that. So no other apologies. Any declarations of interest, please?
What were you thinking?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to know that my stepson is a serving member of Essex Police. Thank you.
Any others? No. Okay, thank you. So, on that note, then we can move into the next item, agenda 4, which is the minutes. You've all seen sight of the minutes. You've all read them avidly, and those people that are here. Are there any changes or comments that you wish to make on that of a substantive nature? Yeah. Good. So I can sign those off as a true record. Excellent. So can I take this on general assent that you're happy with the minutes from the previous meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So agenda item 5.
So just one very small point on the minutes. I think there was a slight typo in minute 6 at the top of page 11, and it should read Stuart Hooper as opposed to Stuart Cooper, please.
It's a major one for
Mr. Hooper, it is.
Thank you for okay. If there are no others, shall we move on?
Thank you.
So there were questions to the chair. There are none that we are bringing forward today. Just for the sake of transparency, really, there was a request for a question, but we felt it was not appropriate for this panel. It's outside of our remit, some of the stuff that's been said. So we do get questions from time to time, and we deal with them as appropriate. Last time round, you may recall that we had a member of the public address the panel. Okay, agenda item 6. This is flowing well, isn't it? Agenda item 6, balance appointment objective. If I can just say that to note the requirements of the panel to meet the balanced appointment objective, we need to do this at the start of each year, but we're unable to do so today. And the main reason for that is that we don't know the full complement of those that will form the panel. We're nearly there, but not quite. So it's inappropriate to bring this to your attention now. So if the recommendation is, unless there's any other items to come forward, is that we delay this decision until, or the report really, until next month, i.e. July. Can I ask for, do I need to ask for a proposal or general assent? General assent? Can I ask for general assent, please? Agreed. Good, thank you. Right, now we're going to shape out the administration side in terms of how we're going to form up for the next 12 months, I suppose. Ethics and integrity is one of the subcommittees that we have formed and been in place for some time. Very, very helpful to get an insight. You know, we lock ourselves in a room with a commissioner. Probably he feels as if he's in, being locked in.
No windows last time.
No windows, that's right, no windows. But it is important. I think it's important because it gives you that opportunity to dig beneath, to ask the questions that sometimes are not on the agenda item, but they come up and they could be between meetings, etc. And listen to what the Commissioner has got to say on items. Sometimes it's very topical and hot off the press, and other times it's to do with the forward plan that we address and then deal with under ethics and integrity. However, it does need, quite rightly, members of the panel to put themselves forward onto that panel. Commissioner.
Can I just say as well, I find the Ethics and Integrity Subcommittee particularly useful from my own perspective because it is good to have an external sounding board. I, of course, am external to policing, but a lot of the conversations that I have with the Chief Constable and his team and others at the APCC and HMIC FRS and the College of Policing, it's very police. It's really helpful to have a completely different perspective on issues, and I've in the past I have brought some issues forward to you and found your input really helpful in calibrating where we are and what we really need to do. So from my perspective, it's a very helpful subcommittee.
We said, those who have served on the committee found the same thing. It's very, very helpful for us to give the public's perspective on things as well as councillors' perspective to you directly without sort of more to do with the sounding board, as you said, and take it from there. So I'd like to ask for volunteers, and there are some that have indicated. What we need is 4+ subs are needed for this subcommittee. The names in the frame so far, or they've asked to be in the frame so far, is myself, Councillor Ely, Lisa Castell, and we have one other, which is Councillor Rigby, but we're unable to make that appointment with at the moment, mainly because he's not a substantive member, and therefore, our terms of reference really doesn't allow that in its current conditions, because we haven't been told he is going to be the substantive member formally. So, can I believe there's going to be a proposal coming forward, Councillor Ricky.
Yeah, given that fact, can we defer the decision of item 7 of today's agenda to the next meeting until we have received confirmation of that, with your discretion?
Yes. Anybody want to second that? Thank you. Yeah, we've got a second there. Yeah. Okay, all in favour? Thank you.
Can I just clarify that that's just for the first recommendation, which is to appoint the members to the panel to note the minutes?
Oh yeah, we must go on to that, yeah, quite right. As pointed out there, that we've only just dealt with item 1, yeah, the item 1 as far as I'm looking at, which is that the panel agree the appointment of the 4 members of the panel and name substitutes. Yeah. If you are considering putting your name forward for this, if you could, sort of have a good think about it and then put it down. Otherwise, we'll see how it falls on the table next time round in July. Okay. If that's if we're going to move forward off that, then what we do need to do is to tie up the paperwork, which is that the panel note the minutes of the Ethics and Integrity Subcommittee meeting held on the 26th of March. Yeah. You've all read this, I take it? Yeah. Can I take it that's agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. So is the panel prepared to note the content of the report? Yep. And I think we're now on to agenda item 8. Again, it's administration-wise for the year, but complaints subcommittee. We have good years and bad years.
The screen says your device is going to turn itself off.
It doesn't do that, it just...
Sorry. Spotted it.
It's behind me, it doesn't count. Yeah. My Italian part of me. Sorry, thank you.
Fine, don't worry.
Complaints subcommittee. Right, what can I say about the complaints subcommittee that you haven't already read? You can go a whole year without meeting. That's good news. But to get there sometimes, you do need to do, some work has to be done. Fortunately, if it doesn't come to the panel, it's all been dealt with by the monitoring officer, or it's been moved to the IOPC, for example. It's usually the other way around, from the IOPC to ourselves. But when it does, they can be quite, in the past, and I'm going from experience, some of them can be quite searching, they can be quite concerning, really, because the complaints come from different areas. It's not for everybody, and however, it is good to be involved. I would suggest if you're inclined to be affected by making sure the right decision is there, and I'm sure we all are, yeah. But sometimes you've got to go through you can go through some traumatic's probably a bit strong, but searching descriptions of how things go, but you've got to come out with the right outcome as opposed to sometimes the heartstrings pulling. Right, okay. Now, in the past, we found out that we need to have a pool of people that are prepared to put themselves forward and be considered if a complaint is to be heard by the panel. Again, going back to experience, any complaint that's heard so far has all been dealt with between half a day and a full day. But last year, as I say, we didn't have any. The previous year we had, I think, one or two, I can't remember, and it just varies. So what am I doing here is I'm actually saying to you, would you consider putting your name down for the pool of people so that we can pull it on through? And as I say, if I could just finish off what I should have done, which was that in the past we had a fixed number, and that fixed number meant that when they couldn't make it, we were in, for that particular event, it made it harder. That's why we go now for a pool of people rather than named. Okay. Would anybody like to put themselves forward? Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How much notice would you give before a meeting?
Usually a couple of weeks. Usually a couple of weeks. It kind of depends. There's a lot of work that's done by the officers and the monitoring officer, as you can appreciate, comes forward, and we end up looking. We got no powers of investigation, quite rightly, but we look at if you like, the background, what's been presented to us, and ask the questions of that. Usually of the monitoring officer. If the monitoring officer. And we have an occasion where we've had to go out to external legal, and that takes a little bit longer, as you can appreciate. But yes, a couple of weeks is probably a suggestion. Yeah.
I'd be happy to put my name on.
Anybody else? Oh, hands full. Great. That's Councillor McCann, Councillor Hartstein, and Councillor Placey, please. Any others? Okay, this is a poll. Okay, so that's myself and
the vice chairman usually.
Yeah, the vice chair. Yeah. And we can put the names in the phone for both of those at the moment because it is a poll. Is that? Okay, so thank you everybody for that. You've also got the report that was presented on complaints on the last year. I don't think it needs too much explanation, but it might just be a question on what happened there. Are there any questions? Good. All right. Just so you're aware from a transparency perspective. When the monitoring officer looks at something and they think there is no case to answer, or it's not a panel, it's not within the panel's remit, then the chair is always walk through the circumstances, looks at what it is, really just to agree with the monitoring officer's decision. Which again just adds to the fact that someone else is having a look at things. Yeah. So this is purely for your information, that it didn't just the monitoring officer deals with it and that's it. Nobody else sees it again. I'm sure you probably thought that, but just making that out. Okay, so then at agenda item 9. Oh yes, sorry. I thought there's more than 3. Right, sorry. Right, so the information contained in the report in relation to the panel's duties with regard to complaints to be noted. Any general say on that? Okay. The panel agreed to the nomination of a pool of panel members, which I think we've done already. And the third item is that the complaints information for the period 1st of May 24 to the 30th of April 2025 be noted. Okay. John, I sent on all of those points, I think. Thank you. All right. Agenda item 9, police effectiveness efficiency appeal report. The Commissioner is aware of this, but when the appeal report was issued, link to it was sent to all panel members. Give them plenty of time to have a look at it and see. And we'll always try and do that when we can. Sometimes we don't get that opportunity for just, timing purposes. So we add a link. We've got a good look, or had a good look at the Peel findings itself. But in the normal sort of way, before we go into any questions, it's always good to have the input from the Commissioner in terms of the report itself, etc. Commissioner, would you like to have a few words, or as many words as you like, really?
Oh, you don't mean that?
No, I don't.
A few words.
I'm just a nice guy, really. Did we say people could take themselves comfortable? I think we did, didn't we? Nobody moved. It must be the air conditioning.
Jackets came off.
Sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you all very much. So, yeah, I mean, HMICFRS, really important tool, really important element of the scrutiny and performance management of policing. Performance management, particularly for the Chief Constable, scrutiny, particularly for me. It is the Peel report in particular, effectiveness, legitimacy, and effectiveness of the police is, for me, it is the big report which gives an insight into police performance. It's a performance audit. So it's similar to a financial audit, but actually looking at how are policing performing? Are they performing well, in line with expectations, or is there areas for improvement or indeed causes for concern? If you want to put it into the same sort of context as perhaps a financial audit, cause for concern would effectively be a qualification. So if you were getting causes for concern, if you were having inadequates, you would be having a financial audit that said, this is a qualified set of accounts and it needs to be better. If you're in the territory of requires improvement, adequate, good or outstanding, you're effectively in the territory of unqualified but with recommendations. And areas for improvement are effectively recommendations within the audit. I'd say that because I'm personally more familiar with financial audit, and I think many people are. HMICFRS is a relatively abstruse policing and fire and rescue specialised work stream and entity. It's a Home Office arm's length organisation which acts on behalf of all in policing to make sure that we understand where we are in terms of performance, and it requires me to make written response to any report that comes out about Essex Police. Those reports also go to the Home Office and they will monitor where we are overall in the matrix of performance of policing across the country. So this is a big deal. It's really important to see. This one was published on the 14th of May. It gave Essex Police a rating of good in 2 areas. There were no outstandings. It gave adequate in 6 areas. I have to say I had a discussion with Andy, Chief Constable Andy Cook, who is the Chief Inspector, about why he was introducing a 5-point rating. We used to have 4. It used to be outstanding, good, requires improvement or inadequate. Adequate is not a good word. For me, it means actually if you're only adequate, you still need it to go a long way before you. But we got adequate, or the Essex Police got adequate in 6 areas, and requires improvement in 1. That's, from my perspective, a really important area to focus on. Protecting vulnerable people is a priority in both the police and crime plan and in the fire and rescue plan. We know that the majority of people who come to harm in this county, be that through crime, through antisocial behaviour, through fire, flood or other hazard, indeed road traffic collision, they are so often, in fact, an overwhelming majority of them are known to government agencies of one nature or another, whether that be policing or fire and rescue, but particularly social care and health. So we need to focus on that, and the fact that we have a requires improvement in that area is certainly something where I have already been talking to the Chief Constable, and we are looking at what we need to do better in that area in order to lift that and hopefully beyond adequate. On the positive side, the report recognises the force's strong leadership. It recognises its commitment to support the well-being of the workforce, and it recognises the work done on improving how the force responds to the public and investigates crime. So there are areas where we are going very much in the right direction. And it's perhaps worth noting as well that the Inspectorate acknowledged the financial position. Essex Police, as we have discussed often in this forum, but perhaps with different membership of the forum, Essex Police is one of the most tightly funded police services in the country. We don't have the lowest council tax precept, but we don't have a high one, we have a moderate one. We don't have the lowest grant allocation, but we are very much in the bottom quartile in grant allocation. You add the two together and we end up being the second most tightly funded police force in the country by revenue per resident. This report recognises that, and it also recognises that given those financial constraints, Essex Police is doing okay, doing fine, I think is what it put it. We ranked 12th out of 43 in terms of performance, looking at how the scale is done nationally, and we rank second from bottom in terms of funding. So the money is being pretty well spent. I will continue, as those of you who have been here for a while know I have been since 2017, to campaign very strongly for a new police funding formula. We have sat down, I have been on the steering group, we have designed one, it is oven ready, it's sitting in a drawer in the Home Office, waiting to go, but it is very controversial, because of course a new funding formula means you are reallocating the existing pot of money, and that means that you are taking money from one to give to another. We would inevitably benefit from a new funding formula. The way it's designed at the moment very much is to pursue where crime is high, and Essex Police's focus for the last near decade has been on crime prevention. Crime is not high in Essex. It is actually below national averages. So the money goes to where the crime is, and that tends to be the big urban areas, and above all, London. So a redesign of the funding formula would, just as it would inevitably benefit us, it would inevitably disbenefit the London Metropolitan Police Service. And I'm sure you are all aware that it is a political impossibility to be taking money away from the Met given the current state of crime in the capital city of this country. It's not going to happen. So I'm afraid I've banged my head against that particular brick wall incessantly for a long time, and I have the headache to go with it, and I won't stop, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to move the wall. That's just an important bit to take on board as we go through performance here. There have been also some compliments played by the Inspectorate on this, particularly around innovation, and it recognises the investment, for instance, made in Project Minerva, which is to understand better where we have risks to people, vulnerable people and risky places. And it found also that we have good relationships with local communities and a determined effort to maximise the visibility of policing. And both of those, I think, are a reason why we have substantially above average public trust and confidence in policing in this county compared with the national averages. And again, way ahead of where it is inside the M25. However, as I said, there is a real need to focus more on protecting vulnerable people. And the area for improvement, which in the questions we've had flagged to us, you have clearly focused on, I would agree with. So around how do we identify better and support better repeat victims of antisocial behaviour. We have an area for improvement here. It's not a cause for concern, but it is an area for improvement. And it's a very important area for improvement. I don't know if you were all aware, because it's quite some time ago now, of the Fiona Pilkington case, which was a very tragic murder-suicide of a mother and a child who had learning disabilities. And the findings of the report into that were clearly that they'd been the victims of substantial antisocial behaviour, not crime, but antisocial behaviour. And the police service, I can't remember, you probably will remember, BJ, I can't remember which police service it was, but that police service was found to have dealt with each individual incident and treated it with the level of severity of that incident, but taken no account of the cumulative impact. And the cumulative impact had been such that that family could not withstand it. And that's what this is about. Now, as I say, it's not a cause for concern. They're not saying that we are at risk at the moment of seeing that happen here in Essex, but as an area for improvement, when it is around vulnerable people, when it is around antisocial behaviour, and that is another of our priorities in the police and crime plan, it's very clearly something which we are focused on. I wrote to the Chief Constable the morning after the Peel report came out at midnight, asking about this particular issue. You are asking about it, and I know the Chief Constable has been asking internally about it. So it is, I think, absolutely right that we should be having a good discussion about it here today. There are various other elements. I mean, in total, there were 14 areas for improvement. Many of those are ones which I think are less innovative, but nonetheless areas where we do need to follow up. And particularly things where we have been innovative and are making a difference, but the inspectorate has highlighted that we may not yet be consistent and may not have all officers working to the same standard. Particularly, I'm focusing on the problem-solving tools that we have. So the things that we have done around introducing problem-solving into our community and neighbourhood policing teams have been really powerful. But what the inspectorate picked up on was not everyone gets it yet. There was a job there to do. Yeah, what we've been doing around domestic abuse problem solving, which has, in contrast to much of the rest of the country, turned the tide, the rising tide of domestic abuse in the county, and is now bringing it down. Nowhere near where we need to be yet, but is bringing it down. But we need for all of the officers in the relevant areas to understand what that process is, why it is effective, and why it is so important that we pursue it. It is the planned intervention as opposed to the response. And as we know, I'm sure from most of our own commercial or social experience, it is so much more effective. It is so much more cost effective, but it's beyond that, it's actually just more effective. It does the job better. We need to reduce the abandonment rate for non-emergency calls. That has been a project we've talked to you about before, the improvements in 101, and we should be seeing that come to effect in the current year. The programme effectively of renewing the way we do 101 was implemented and completed in April, and is now in place, and we should therefore be seeing those improvements. And of course, we again need to make sure more broadly than just around vulnerable people, we need to ensure that the victim needs assessments that we do are being carried out and acted on consistently across the force. Again, victim satisfaction, victim confidence in policing is lower than the general public confidence in policing. I suppose one can say that is to be expected to an extent. They have been victims of crime, but nevertheless the gap is too large. We have not seen the same improvements in victim confidence that we have in general public confidence, and therefore we do need to make sure that we are consistent in the way that we support victims and give them better feedback. So I think overall, looking at it in a national context, it's fine. But looking at the specifics, there are very clearly things that we can take from this report and do better. And that, after all, is the purpose of an inspection. It is there to give us that detailed audit on performance and say where we are strong and where we can do better. And we'll certainly be taking that and implementing it. And you can be, I'm going to offer you the assurance, at least, that I will be making sure that all 14 of the areas for improvement are followed up on effectively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. For those who aren't aware of how we generally deal with this next section, really, which is questions for the Commissioner. Those who attended the meeting on the Monday will know this is a pre-meeting, will know that we try and make ourselves more efficient by having explored the paperwork. We then form questions and then just make sure we're not trying to duplicate ourselves, yeah? So it's appropriate, therefore, that I will deal with those questions that were raised on the Monday, sent to the OPCC for their comments, FCC for their comments, and really just to try and avoid I need a bit more time here to address that particular one. Yeah. So it just makes life easier for us. It doesn't make it any easier for the Commissioner, but we're not here to do that, really. So from a challenging perspective, once the questions have gone through, yeah, or a suitable time, if you've got a question, just raise your hand, get my attention, I'll make a note of it, and already Councillor Buckley can't keep a good man down, they say, but I'll pick that up in a moment, and I will just go through that and make sure. Please, if a question that you were thinking of has already been addressed or whatever, then I'll leave it to you to withdraw your question, or not, as the case may be. Councillor Buckley's got a question, but go on.
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, it was around the area dealing with vulnerable people, which the Commissioner raised earlier on. Most of the residents that I deal with are concerned about very low-level crime and about the incidents that make them feel uncomfortable. And it happened, and this only occurred this morning, that I spent this morning in Dorset Hospital. It wasn't for me, I was the chauffeur. And I spent some time talking to the security guards there. And he said to me that, as I questioned why we needed a security officer in the hospital, and he said to me that not only do you get the drunks, which we expect on perhaps a Friday or Saturday night, but we also get mentally ill people, which we're all aware of, and we know that's a key issue in the Commissioner's programme. But it just occurred to me that these guys are in the private sector, albeit working for the health service. What can we do to work with those to eliminate or reduce those incidents which are causing damage to people's care in the health service?
It's a very good question, Councillor Buckley, and it's one where there has been a lot of work done. So I myself was involved in the steering group for the police productivity review last year, 18 months ago now. And one of the things that it found was that there needed to be a lot more effective way of dealing with particularly mental health sufferers who were falling into a space where neither the health service nor policing were dealing with it adequately. And very clearly, there are mental health sufferers where it would be utterly inappropriate for them to be spending a night in the police cells. Equally well, there are mental health sufferers who can be violent, and that is not something that a nurse or an orderly is trained or equipped to deal with. So that was something that was actually raised up to national government level. There was a good conversation between the Home Office, the National Police Chiefs Council, the APCC and the Department for Health. And a programme was piloted in Humberside called Right Care, Right Person, which is about making sure that we have the right people dealing with the right issues, particularly related to mental health sufferers who may come into the hands of the police. Yeah, it was the case that if someone who was hard to control was leaving the hospital, it would then be the police who were called to bring them back again. when in actual fact there was probably no danger to the public, it was a danger to themselves. Difficult territory. And that effectively is where the health service security officers come from. That they are there to do the bit of the gap filling between where is it a real police issue and where is it a purely health issue and someone who needs treatment, but where is it someone who needs treatment but is actually difficult to deal with. And that's where they are.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just went against exactly what I said.
I answered it anyway. Sorry.
I didn't want to, it was exciting.
It's a good question.
Get out. But, we will now follow the questions that have already been given to you. And then I'll look for any other questions that people might want. But, make me aware that you want to ask a question. That's the way I want to put it. And flowing very quickly on to Councillor Lacey, who's got a question.
You touched on some of this already, Commissioner, I think, and it was good to see that the inspector found you good at reporting crime, but not so good where it involves ASB. So mine's a three-prong bit. So how is this being addressed? How will the service ensure that incidents are being accurately recorded in the future? And how does this affect the reported reduction in ASB figures? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. I think it's quite important at this point just to point out there are kind of two strands to the ASB issue in the report. The area for improvement is specifically about the recording of antisocial behaviour, repeated antisocial behaviour against a particular victim, and the fact that it may be being covered by the fact that there is a crime committed at the same time and not recorded separately. Page 15 of the HMICFRS report, under preventing and deterring crime and antisocial behaviour and reducing vulnerability, gives you the area for improvement. It's an area where we're rated adequate, not good. And it's very clear that we have more to do, particularly around that issue. There was then, later in the report, a comment about the fact that antisocial behaviour in Essex is half, the incidence is half the national incidence. And why was that? And we couldn't articulate that well enough. I'm afraid the media conflated those two and said antisocial behaviour is being underreported. It isn't really as low as that. That's not what this report says. Okay. So there are two different strands. One is the conversation I've had with the Chief Constable, where what are we doing to make sure that we are protecting those vulnerable victims better? And the other is, where are we in terms of the accuracy of reporting of aggregate antisocial behaviour? Is the underreporting related to repeat victims actually going to make much difference to that? Now, it probably will make a difference, but when you consider we've come down from 60,000 antisocial behaviour incidents a year in 2016 to 14,000 last year, it's going to have to be a heck of a difference for a relatively small number of victims who are repeat victims to really change the fact that it's moved. And I mean, the point is, it would have been good if we could have articulated it better to the inspectorate, but I guess it's partly because it's been such a long-term and complex job to reduce antisocial behaviour. So it's gone through hotspot policing, it's gone through in different towns at different times. It's gone through Safer Streets Fund investment in different towns in different times, CCTV, clearing lines of sight, cutting back vegetation, joint patrols with local authorities, stuff around the nighttime economy, making sure that we're working for purple flag status in different parts of the county, making sure that we're doing all bar none, all bar none. Get the names right, Roger. And that's been going on for years. And I sit every quarter and question that data and have seen it come down. And the first year it started to come down, back in 2018, we had a big debate about whether it was a reporting issue or whether it was actually happening. And we had that debate again the year after, and again the year after. And of course we then had a spike during COVID because all of the interactions of people who were not staying 2 metres apart were antisocial behaviour. You can't really look at that year of 2020-21 as being an accurate reflection. But then we go back into more normal time in 2022 and it comes down again. And I think it's because it's been such a laborious and intensive but slow process to bring it down that far. Quite hard to articulate that when the inspector says, so what have you done to bring it down so much? They're kind of expecting an answer about what we did in the last 6 months. It wasn't the last 6 months. It's come down a long time over time. We will, Chief Constable I know is work and has already asked for this work to be done. We will look again and make sure that the rigour with which antisocial behaviour is being reported and recorded is raised to the same standard that we get for crime data. As you know, our crime data accuracy is regarded as good, 98% accurate, absolutely rigorous, and we need for antisocial behaviour to be in that same category so that you can be confident, so that I can be confident, and so that, most importantly, the public can be confident that this isn't being done with smoke and mirrors. We need to be able to say that, and I think in a reasonable time frame, over the next few weeks, we will do that. Is that right? Or 3 months?
You've put him on the spot.
Any time frame like that, we will
Say yes.
No, I'll hold you to it.
I think the process for making sure that we are protecting vulnerable victims who are repeat victims of antisocial behaviour will take longer than that, won't it?
I mean, and to assure Commissioner, the work has started. The minute we receive the report, the work starts on looking at those AFIs to make sure that we're looking at those and to assure myself and, straight away that message that both the Commissioner and I are reading that, and the first question is, well, can we explain? Do we understand? And let's make sure we know that we're doing the right things to do it. So that work is ongoing, it's in train. My reticence to say a timescale on it is because you're talking about since 2016, there's a lot of data, so I don't want to set any false expectations to the Commissioner or to the panel, but it will be looked at rigorously and reported transparently.
It's reality and non-politics, really, and that's what we're looking for in this room. We might not like what we hear, but as long as it's as accurate as we know it to be, that's as much as I think we can hope for, and then work on any delta that's there. Right, thank you, Commissioner. We have got a question from Councillor Charles.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, in your opening remarks, you touched on the spending review.
Yes.
And when you interrogate the Green Book, you see in the detail that there is a commitment to increase the police spending power by increasing council tax presets. What, in your assessment, do you believe that announcement by the government will impact your ability to deliver community policing, given the current context that you're facing of a tight budget settlement?
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a really, really relevant question. If we hadn't covered it here, I would have covered it in my own comments later on the agenda. So, yeah, there is more money for policing in this review, and that has to be welcomed. It's not as much as we asked for. I was part of the group that put together the submission together with Chief Constables back in September, October. The government has a very clear Safer Streets mission, which involves increasing neighbourhood policing by 13,000 people, halving drug-driven life crime and halving violence against women and girls. Those 13,000 people are 4,000 PCSOs, 3,000 new police officers, 3,000 redeployed police officers from other areas, and 3,000 special constables. We've been really good at recruiting special constables. We have the second largest special constabulary outside of the Met, and we'll gird our loins and give that another push. Last year, this current year, the 3,000 redeployment is underway. So we have put more officers into neighbourhood policing this year. But that leaves us with the other 7,000, the 3,000 extra cops and the 4,000 PCSOs. The spending review announced, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, announced a 2.3% per annum increase in police spending power. As you rightly point out, they didn't announce it, but I know from conversations with the Home Office that the assumption underlying that is a £14 per annum increase in Band D council tax precept for policing, which is 5.4% for Essex. Yep, per annum. Obviously, it slightly goes down as because the £14 is on a slightly higher figure every year, but 5.4%. Nationally, it's a 4.8% per annum increase in council tax precept. Our precept is slightly lower than the other. The other element of it is a 1.7% real terms increase in central government grant. Now, when we heard the 1.7% in real terms, I thought, great, 1.7 on top of 3.4% inflation, that sounds really good. But you don't get to the 2 and a bit billion over 3 years if you do that. You get to a much bigger figure. So, of course, we had a session with the Home Office, asked the question. It's 1.7% real on top of the OBR's assumption for GDP deflator, which is 1.9%. So that's 3.6%, which is only slightly above where inflation is right now. And when you factor in that the MPCC submission for pay increase for police officers, and I think we will want to do the same for staff, this year is 3.8%, you can see that actually in the next year, the government grant increase is less than the likely pay increase. It's already leaving a bigger gap. So given that we will have inflation in non-pay as well, we're going to have to find savings to pay for that, but we're also going to have to, if we want to sustain policing in Essex at its current strength and continue to bring crime down in the way we have been doing for the last couple of years, we will need to use council tax precept. We will need to articulate to you and to the public what they're getting for that. Otherwise, we won't be able to do it, because we need to have public support to do this. But the spending review is predicated on an inflation-busting council tax precept increase in each of the 3 years of the spending review. And even if we do that, there is no money here for more officers, and there is no money for investment in technology. Both of those things are off the table. We will be really struggling to fund our ongoing capital renewal, making sure that police stations and cells remain in the state they should be. That will be really, really hard. We will probably have to borrow to do that. We are allowed to borrow to do that. We would like to borrow, because it's very hard to see how you're going to pay borrowing down when finances is so tight, but we do have to do that work. I don't think we can realistically borrow to fund extra police officers. That way is the road to ruin.
Any more good news?
The good news is that looks as though if we work really, really hard at it, we should be able to sustain this record strength of Essex Police and continue to bring crime down. That is good news.
Yeah, definitely. Hard times ahead, but that goes across the piece, really, isn't it? Potentially, anyway. Who knows what's around the corner? Okay, we've now got a question then. Lisa Costella's got a series of questions, and I'll leave it to you to decide which ones you want to ask, so that we can make our time efficient.
Obviously, just following on slightly from the crime and data integrity on page 8 of the inspector report, my concerns really are around the fact that the report found out of a sample of 50 personal ASB incidents, 7 crimes should have been recorded, yet only 3 were. This raises serious concerns about the accuracy and integrity of crime data. What precise remedial steps have been taken to address this under-recording of ASB and linked crimes, and how is the force ensuring that officers consistently and accurately classify these incidents going forward?
So, I think the important point is that crime is being accurately recorded, and we do record SSP does record incidents in line with the national standards there. We clearly need to tighten our processes around recording antisocial behaviour when it is in the same instance as crime. We've historically only been recording the crime. There's an element of training there. There's an element of making sure that there is a broad understanding of what needs to be recorded, and there's particularly an element of training related to understanding the risks around not doing so. There's also an element of training around making sure that, and this may be a later question, but we need to make sure that the more senior officers are actually telling the officers attending when there is an incidence of repeat antisocial behaviour as well. If you haven't, this is the problem, if you haven't recorded it, you can't say, this is the 7th time you've been to this address to deal with something which is not recorded as a crime, and therefore actually looks quite minor, but this person is likely to be increasingly, the cumulative effect on that person is going to be really bad. So,
from a visual perspective, though, is there not a tick box so you can put a crime and then, oh, it's a link to ASB? I'm just trying to understand how incidents are not linked, because if it's just a record under a record under a record listing and people have to click into it, that's quite an operationally onerous process for an officer to go through. So is there no way that's defined?
if I may, I'll pass that on to the Chief Constable, because that's very much more, he has the lived experience.
So different systems. So first of all, someone calls us or rings us up, we enter that on a deployment log, Storm. So that's the record that decides, whether we go or we don't, whether it's a crime in action or whatever. So that's the first records. There'll be a number of records created on there, which will where we record what we do around that. Some incidents will only ever stay on Storm because there's no deployment, they're not for us, and maybe something that needs to be referred to another agency. So it'll be recorded on that system. Where there is a crime committed, we'll record it on our records management system, commonly known as Athena, and we'll record on there, and the investigation will follow through and be recorded on that system. We don't put all the records on Storm, on Athena, simply because of the double keying issue, and we deal with thousands of incidents every day. Thankfully not thousands of crime, but we do thousands of antisocial behaviour. So there's two systems on which we need to record that. We are now recording incidents through Single Online Home, the online thing, which some of you may be familiar with. And again, we need to record that onto those two systems. So they're recorded in two places because some never get past being an incident. People ring us up, for example, a crash on the M11 or something, we'll get 100 calls, we'll record one, that will create one incident record, but of course those things, so they're all in different places. Our systems are complex, and I think as the Commissioner said, the key bit that comes from the report and the bit that I'm concerned at, and we are working on already, we didn't wait for the report to be published, the inspectorate are very, we sit alongside them, they sit with us, they go with the teams. The minute this was flagged, we're starting to work on that issue because they're looking for the positive evidence so they understand it. And it is making sure that when we record it, and I think the Commissioner was right when he gave his summary, it's what we've got to make sure is, first of all, that where we're going to an incident, the officers are recognising it. That's the training question, making sure they recognise the importance of it and recording. The second point the Commissioner made is that our control staff, once we're sending an officer to an incident, they may not know, that's the first time they've gone there, but are they clear that when they go there and see what's in front of them, single instance, that they're made aware, well, actually, this is the second, third, 15th, 20th of the time, so they can make a proper assessment of what to do there and then, and also to assess the risk. That's the challenge we've got with the volume around those. So bringing that, so that's the recommendation, or the AFI, the area for improvement around that. Yes, it is, boxes that they tick on there, but if you think about the number of crimes and then the number of incidents, and then of course, the classification of some of those incidents is difficult. So they do record it like that. It's about analysing that data and making it available to the officer there and then in a timely way so they can make the statements. That answer the question, I think.
I think so, because I think the problem you have with ASB is you're going to have different officers, possibly every time you're talking 10s, 20s, 30 officers could turn up to these incidents, and if they're not linking them, then that becomes a big issue. But your victim will be telling the officers, so it's whether the officers will be open to that feedback to say, look, I called multiple times, and then have that inquisitive mind to go away and go, let me look at this again and take it back to their supervising officers, and it not just be flagged as a neighbourhood dispute and dismissed, which I think is a lot of the issue that you have with individual ASB. So don't necessarily necessarily agree with the Commissioner when he was talking about you don't feel there would be a huge increase with individual. If you speak to victim services and perhaps speak to some of these victims, I think you'll be surprised at how vulnerable these people are by the effects and damage and trauma they've been through.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to play it down. Just in terms of total number, the number of victims, it's not possible for it to be a big difference in the, statistically speaking, but in terms of severity, I absolutely agree with you.
And I think with speaking to victims like I do, almost on a daily basis, a large proportion of the work I do is individual ASB.
Yeah.
And I see how life-destroying it is.
Yes.
So I do take that quite personally for them. I'm the one reassuring them that linking incidents needs to happen, and as long as officers are open to that. So moving on from that then. It highlights that officers are not consistently identifying ASB, particularly when it occurs with other crimes. So we know we've talked about that. It could be criminal damage, it could be public order. So it was my understanding then that they can link these things if those individual crimes are there then, from what the Chief Constable just indicated. But it's not being picked up by officers. Is that a fair assumption?
So I think that the point is that we need to double check that and make it happen. Yes. So that's a question of recirculating the national guidance which does exist, and making sure that both the Contact and Control Centre and the individual officers are aware of that. And we've also, I think, got an item on the Athena system, so that we are actually going to be better in a position to use their problem management module, and roll that out more effectively as well.
Yes, on the same point really, which is that we hear a lot about AI nowadays, and whether we understand it or not is a different thing. But this seems to be something that perhaps AI can be involved with benefit. Am I completely wrong on this? There's the first question. And the second is, other forces that use the same tools that we use, if they're in this particular element of recorded multiple sessions of ASB, if they're getting better results than us, are they doing something different, and are we looking at that, or have we done that and we still have something else?
I think that's one of the outcomes of the inspector report, that we need to look and see who's getting outstanding or good on this. And nobody. No one's outstanding. Anyone good?
Some.
Thames Valley, I've got those. Merseyside, Thames Valley's adequate. Merseyside and Greater Manchester Police, the ones I looked at, they're ranking in at good. And Kent, coincidentally, is also good.
Kent are very close friends.
I know.
Anyway,
it's a good point.
So moving forward then from that, what we were talking about, you said you're looking at it. So in officer training, is ASB identification delivered in a robust face-to-face format, or is it primarily through passive means such as podcasts or e-learning modules, which may limit engagement and retention of the information shared with them?
So the answer is that we undoubtedly do it face-to-face. I'm sure I've got a few notes on this to actually give you a definitive answer. What number? Yeah. So it's in the basic training, and then in terms of refresher training, July 2024, all of the then community policing teams received additional. That was face-to-face at shift briefings, and it covered both policy and responsibilities. A lot of those people are new. As you know, we've been recruiting very actively for the last few years. So we need to do more of that, and we need, as more people come through, we keep on doing it. So there will be a requirement on all officers in the neighbourhood policing teams to undertake the new College of Policing Neighbourhood Officer Training Programme, and that will be delivered face-to-face, and that programme will be complete within 18 months.
would the supervisory level be attending that as well? Because we can't lay all the blame at new recruits, because they will take their rationale up to supervisors, and these supervisors are ultimately making the decisions.
And there was certainly a comment in the report. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. No, that's fine.
There was certainly a comment in the report about the fact that the supervisors and the more senior officers as well need to be latching onto this and flagging it to the new recruits and making sure that they understand the importance of the impact on the vulnerable individual. So the answer to that is yes, that has to be part of it as well.
Page 15, one of the AFIs was a senior officer-led meeting is tasked with reviewing high-risk and repeat ASB cases. This process is currently undermined by flawed and incomplete data. I'm aware that Hotspot ASB you're doing phenomenally well. Conference yesterday, some fantastic presentations on that, but I'm just focusing here on individual ASB, and there doesn't seem to be any robust data about how you're dealing with this, and therefore, with it being an AFI, how a senior officer can make any decisions for improvements when they're not getting this information. So what assurances can you provide that accurate and complete data is now being fed into this review process? Without this, how can the force guarantee appropriate safeguarding investigation responses for victims of ASB?
So, the way you phrased that one, Ms. Castell, it sounds as though you are working on the assumption that the data is of such poor quality that no decision can be made.
No.
If that were the case, this would be a cause for concern, not an area for improvement. We need for the data to be better, but the state of the data at the moment is not invalidating the overall process. Otherwise, the conclusions of the inspection will be much worse than they are. So we need to work with what we've got. The reality of policing is data will never be perfect. There will always be a gap between what we know and what's going on. That is regrettable, but I think you would recognise that not everything will always be reported, and not everything will always be captured perfectly. We need to improve how that is working, but I don't think it. I mean, Chief Constable, do you want to pass any comment? My impression from what we have had here is not that this is an invalid process. It is a process which needs to get better.
Again, I won't repeat your point about not being a cause of concern. This was of great concern to me when it was reported to me, and I know my deputy at the time spoke to the inspector, and we discussed it at the time to make sure, to be absolutely certain that what was the nature of what happened, and how serious was it, and we're very clear that what the issue is here is that Super Officer meeting is not getting the complete data, which refers back to the 2 points where we're reporting crime. Councillor, you're really clear. We go to a criminal damage, somebody has damaged something, and we report that crime, completely audited, 98% accuracy, we're dealing with that bit. Where there is ancillary antisocial behaviour of a personal nature, we are not recording that. What that means is that when you're trying to see is that more serious than the criminal damage, broken fence, smashed car, windscreen, whatever that is, we are not identifying, which you rightly set out, those occasions where that has been a sort of compound effect. That's the first piece of data that's not there. That's what that's referring to. We are putting in place and have put in place, making sure that data is now identified and being recognised in that meeting. And then the second element in relation to that is the description around officers, as I won't repeat it all, but going to a scene and saying, oh, this looks like a neighbourhood dispute, and actually going, no, this is the 22nd time we've been there, so perhaps you need to ask those more problematic questions. And then, of course, that 22nd time, because we're not doing that, we're not escalating to medium high, so therefore it's not getting in front of that senior officer because it's never triggered. They're the two bits. That's the incomplete data that the senior officer can't then, direct further activity. Not, and I was really clear around this when we were reporting this, because the inspection is not a one-day process. It's months and months. We go through it. It's very detailed. So we're all the time saying, well, tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we need to do better. Tell us where we're good as well. I hasten to say that. So we were working through that to be really, really clear about what the issues are, and that's what the issue is. It's an issue we need to improve. That's why it's an area for improvement. But it's not the wholesale failure of that meeting to identify any risk or do anything. It's specifically in relation to those two issues, which you've rightly highlighted from your question.
Thank you, Chief Constable. I think that's a very robust answer. I won't take away from the fact that we have talked about complaints in this meeting where linking incidents was already raised. It's disappointing we've got to this level where it had to come from an independent report where that's been now actions being taken. To go back to the Commissioner's statement, I was quoting what the Inspectorate said, and the Inspectorate actually said this meeting relies on incomplete data due to the lack of consistent identification of antisocial behaviour and the flawed officer risk assessments. That's what I was referring to.
Yes. Yes, I didn't dispute that you're accurate. The implication that therefore the meetings are invalid is, I think, taking it a stage further.
I think we need to move on from that question. If we've had an answer, it is, the Inspector's report, there's always going to be elements that are kind of one way or the other. We've spent quite a bit of time on this as well, and we've not finished yet. So I'm going to break slightly and ask Councillor Rigby, who wanted to pose a question, and then we'll come back into the main flow.
Thank you. Taking the various communications thread from the report and the response to it in turn, how will the Commissioner ensure consistency between what his office and the police say in addressing the outcomes from the Peel report, both internally, obviously there are always improvements that could be made, as well as externally, including to the public and the panel?
So I made a statement that I thought was appropriate. We talked about the overall shape of the report. The Chief Constable made a statement that he felt was appropriate. It is my job, it's my role in this to represent the interests of the public, and I feel I did so in terms of the statement that I made. It is not my job to control the Chief Constable's statements. If I had thought that the Chief Constable was making a statement that was misleading to the public, I would, of course, address that with him.
Can I just follow up?
Yeah.
I'm happy with the answer.
Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying, Commissioner, there, but it is your role to hold the Chief Constable to account.
Exactly.
So what steps will you take to ensure future public communications, particular high-reach platforms? So, for example, Essex Police, I'm going to use Facebook, which apparently my son says makes me old, rather than all social media. So I'm just going to refer to that with the figures that I have. Essex Police reach up to 280,000 people through that platform. And no disrespect to yourself, but the Commissioner just has just over 4,000 on his platform. So the message you sent out were completely honest and transparent may be lost. And I know from speaking to members of the panel, people at the conference, people who work for the police, nobody read the 55-page report. I mean, I don't know why nobody read it. I read it from page to page. So they are going to base their assumption pretty much on what the Chief Constable has said within that report. So when you look at just one particular statement from that, which brings me to some level of concern about the message we're sending to people and why we perhaps do need to have a little clarity around this, is you said, I want to quote it so I don't have to memorise it. I apologise. The machine's not working. There we go. You said, other areas to focus attention on include dealing with antisocial behaviour, including better care for repeat victims. The harm caused to individuals by ASB and low-level crime can be traumatic, and we need to deal better with this in Essex, which I thought was completely open and transparent. In comparison, the Chief Constable's opening line was, crime and antisocial behaviour continues to fall in Essex. We are pleased with the Inspectorate's report. I've recognised how we've improved in responding to the public and investigating crime since our last inspection. Those two things say completely different things to the public.
Those are not the complete statements of both.
No, I wasn't going to read out the whole. The opening lines.
They are the opening lines, yes.
That is what.
I think what I'm taking away from this is perhaps I need to have a conversation with the Chief Constable about whether, when we have statements like this, and mine are picked up by the print media and the legacy media. I think they're so patronisingly called these days, aren't they? I don't particularly like the term, but you know what I mean. Social media, you're absolutely right, I don't have the reach that the police do. Most of that police reach is actually around incident reporting and people reading about things that are going on. I'm not quite sure how many of them will actually have read, just as they didn't read the 55-page report, I'm not sure that I've read a statement about an HMIC FRS report either. I did read the whole 55 pages, you did. I know that the gentleman on my left did, and the lady on my right. I think probably the thing to do is to pick up and say, when we have a situation like this, can we please also use the police social media reach to publish my statement?
Okay. Questions done. There was several in there. Councillor McCann.
You've gone through the list, Chair. I've got one. Yeah, thank you. Commissioner, page 59, there's a commentary on stop and search.
59 of which?
Of the report.
Yeah.
Of the...
Oh, sorry.
HMIC FRS report or...
It's 59, yes. Sorry, no, it's page 12. Oh, sorry, section 12, page 59 of 132.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in so many different page numbers.
Yeah,
it's good to have the page numbers.
To everybody.
Sometimes we have to actually ask which one. Page 59 of 132. I'm getting...
Note to everybody, please.
I'm there.
Bring the questions forward. Can you use the bottom line as well, i.e. the number of total? That'd be great.
So, stop and search. Obviously, I suppose the question is, what are you doing to build your assurance around the stop and search data? Because this highlighted that 30% of the stop and search data was removed on the basis that officers weren't asking for the self-defined ethnicity of the person being stopped. And that's quite a significant chunk of the data.
So where are you?
Paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4.
Over a 2-day period, police searched 97 people, 71. Where are we? Okay, sorry. Doesn't include those.
About a third.
Okay, so we failed to record the self-defined ethnicity of the people. Of the person, yes.
And it's also worth highlighting that in paragraph 3 it says Essex Police carried out 16,830 stop and searches. Obviously, that's instances of stop and search. That's not 16,830 different people being stopped. So within that, there's quite an issue there around if you had Joe Bloggs, who's a prominent nominal robber, and he's going back to the same areas again and again, the police are doing their job very well in terms of hotspot policing. They're targeting resource into that hotspot area. It's entirely likely that Joe Bloggs actually contributes to, could be 500 of those stop and searches. And therefore, his ethnicity data is skewing the overall figures. So I suppose in terms of building assurance around stop and search data, is there something there around a more, I think, building more nuanced understanding? Because this is really key. Because this data is probably more than any other data set in policing weaponised by anti-police activists to say there's huge disproportionality in stop and search. So I suppose, what are you doing to build the assurance that there's a more, I think, nuanced understanding of what that data actually means?
You're absolutely right. It is one which is often used to say that it is two-tier policing targeted at different ethnic groups, not neutral at all, not treating everyone equally and impartially under the law. And it's somewhere, because of that we have actually put a lot of effort into making sure that we are monitoring and understand those disparities. So 16,830 is a lot more than we used to do. It's up, I think there was a time we did about 3,000. It's important. It's a very important tool in the continued battle to reduce drug-driven violence and drug crime and drug gangs and county lines across the county. It's one of the really important strands, and we need to keep on doing it. But it is my role to scrutinise what's going on behalf of the public and make sure we're not doing it inequitably. I think there are a couple of the elements of scrutiny, and I look at the data quarterly. I get a full report to the Quarterly Performance and Resources Scrutiny Board. a couple of bits which are really important in terms of understanding and being able to either ask for a plan to improve or rebut criticism. One of those is understanding where the people actually come from. So when we're looking at disproportionality in the system, and we are seeing that you are 4 times more likely if you are of black ethnic heritage to be stopped and searched in Essex relative to your share of the population than if you're white or Asian, Asian ethnic heritage. The question is, is it actually against the population of Essex, or is it against the population which includes a large number of incomers? And it includes a large number of incomers. So we look at that data, and if you relativise it for Essex residents, it looks healthier, but it's still disproportionate. To me, the most important bit is, are we acting on intelligence or are we acting on prejudice? And the nature of acting on intelligence is that we are stopping people who are going out equipped for crime. Are they carrying drugs? Are they carrying weapons? That's the one I really look at, and we look at the analysis of that by ethnic group. And that tells me that, firstly, the success rate in Essex is substantially higher than the national average. It's nearer 40% than the 20-odd% it is nationally. And secondly, it isn't disproportionate. We're actually stopping people pretty much evenly going about equipped for crime. So we're doing it on the basis of intelligence, because we are getting it right more often than police do nationally, and we're not differentiating in terms of getting it right by ethnic group. We also do a public perception survey on a quarterly basis, and we have a very high level of confidence in stop and search. It's one of the questions we ask. And interestingly, people of black ethnic heritage in Essex have a higher level of confidence in the impartiality with which we exercise stop and search than the average, which I think is quite a powerful message.
Okay, I've got 2 questions to come there. 3 now. So, Councillor Charles, please, followed by Councillor Vicky and Councillor Stamp. Sorry, I was
misled by the sign in front of you.
No, I know. It was. I was hesitating on something else. Councillor Charles, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, page 20 of the Peel report, page 67 of the agenda pack, which sits under the adequate outcome for preventing and deterring crime and antisocial behaviour and reducing vulnerability. In this section, my eye is drawn to the Clear Hold Build initiative, of which Harlow was the first in the county in Stowe to go through this Home Office-backed initiative. And it was interesting to see in the May National Police Chief Council's newsletter focused on Clear Hold Build that it found that violent offences with injury were down by 53% and crimes occurring within a public space were down by 73%. I also had the opportunity recently to attend the Police College Clear Hold Build Hydra training with partners, which was a good opportunity to build partnership working. Is there an opportunity here, Commissioner, to use initiatives like this to engender greater partnership working so that they can act, in effect, as a stepping stone to improve future inspection outcomes in this area?
I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. We've been doing the hotspot policing, which is an element really of Clear Hold Build. It's sort of in the clear element, isn't it? And we know where we've done that actually those figures you quoted, 53%, 73%, yeah, we've had areas where it's been down up to 85. We've had areas where it's been down as little as 50, but that's about as low as the impact gets. So it is very impactful. I think there's quite a lot of learning to do yet around the build. I think the clear we definitely know how to do. The hold, we've got some really good ideas on. The build, that is absolutely partnership. And I'd really like to take that up with you. I mean, yeah, we're doing it in the Stowe. The Latin bush beckons, doesn't it, really? And I'm sure that there are areas in the other areas around the county. Clacton Town Centre has been in the national assessment before now, and that is an area where we know we have to do. There are other areas that we can cite as well. York Road South End is certainly an area where we're doing it in South End next, I think, or now.
I know, if I can, Chair. So in South End around Warwick Square and the issues there, we are using the clear whole build methodology around it. Your Commissioner's right. There is, it requires strong partnerships. We have those. It requires additional police resourcing to do that, support from other agencies, which you'll have seen in the Stowe around that. So we have to align those resources. Not all mine. Some of the other agencies, our Eastern Region Specialist Operations Unit assist with those bits, some of those things. So we need to make sure we solicit that resource to support us and make the intelligence case as to where those should be. But as I said, we're already starting to do that in Southend, using the same methodology there to good effect, similar effect. It's got to be used in the places where it will have the effect. It's in particularly high crime areas where it will have particular effect. It's not you won't see the impact if you put it somewhere which doesn't need it, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Wickie.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. Given the report as a whole, where does the Essex rank across the inspectorate area? If not across nationally, then certainly without ordered.
Yeah.
And secondly, with regards to the AFIs that have been identified, do we have an opportunity to share best practice, taking into account obviously one size doesn't fit all? Is there an opportunity for us to share best practice both ways with other forces to enable improvements to be made effectively and quickly?
So taking the second of those first, the answer is definitely yes. I mean, that's essentially the raison d'etre of the College of Policing. They have a what works site. They advertise who's doing what well. HMIC FRS feed into that. So the bits that we have here where we were complimented around things like Project Minerva, etc., they feed into that, and some of them are picked up by the Home Office. The hotspot policing initiatives that we did a few years ago was exactly an instance that was picked up. As Councillor Cox said when she was a member of the panel, that's not new, Roger, that's old theory. It might be old theory, but it was new practice. And we picked up on it, we did it, we showed how it could be done effectively, it's been picked up, it's been followed, and we need to do the same, as you were just pointing out. I think you said Merseyside, Greater Manchester and Kent, was that the three you cited?
Those are up for good at the moment, yeah. Around
exactly. So we need to make sure that we are talking to the college and talking to those forces about what it is that we can pick up and use here. It may be trickier to implement in Essex what works in Merseyside. It's a very different environment, but Kent isn't really very different at all. In fact, in many ways, it's just a mirror image the other way around the Thames of where we are. Very similar in size and layout. So yes, is the answer to that. In answer to your first question, I think, I can't get the right page of the report. Page 36 of the panel, you actually have the chart which shows you the answer to that. So here we have plotted the pill ratings, giving a 1, 2, 3, 4 score for each of the pillars against net revenue expenditure per capita. And as you can see, we are basically not top left, but higher left, which means left means low net revenue expenditure per capita, and higher means a better grading overall. So basically, if you're going from the top to the bottom, we are 12th. If you're going from the left to the right, we're second. So we achieved the 12th best outcomes in the country with the second lowest funding. Oh, yes, a good point. Merseyside, cited. Just slightly ahead of us in terms of performance, and £290 per resident compared with 190.
Which way?
We are the lower funded. So
We said earlier then.
yeah, very, very similar performance to us, slightly better, but massively more funding per capita. If we had Merseyside's money,
Well, then football players. And moving quick.
I think they're in Cheshire, actually.
Well, yeah. Councillor Stamp, please.
Yeah, mine's going to be a gentle question, which I don't think you're going to be expecting that, are you, coming from me? But no, I'd like to back on to what Councillor Charles has basically said and what you've said and what some of the other members have said, really. And some of the things I want to raise is, and you've said it yourself, about visible policing in communities. It does actually work. I think you know what I'm going to say now is I represent a rural area. Huge rural community, well, huge to us.
Yeah.
And we don't see police very often. We see the fire engines come quite quickly. We had that horrible Denwick farm, and I think we had 11 police engines respond straight away to that one. But we recently had an incident, and I don't want to take it down to single incidents, but I want to just give this as an example of what I want to say, which there was a serious incident from where we are, took 45 minutes to get a response, and that was a violent ASB act. So my question is, even if you are successful in being able to raise the preset, which I hope you are because you've always been underfunded, and I accept that, but what guarantees, if any, do you have that it won't just go to the urban areas? We have crime in rural areas, we have farm crime, we have all sorts of crime, but we're still always, in my opinion, underfunded and underrepresented. The police responded, the police were at an ONS committee at Malden District Council. They were brilliant. I didn't attend, but I messaged somebody on the panel and said, we've got this incident, and it was youth coming into shops, the co-op, paraphernalia. There's this craze now in rural areas where they want to ride their bikes and harass everybody who's shopping. We put that out in that. The next day, the police came. It went. The police came for a couple of weeks. It went. But now, obviously, because, and I know you're funded, but it just keeps coming back. And those teenagers now, possibly, I have to be careful, were part of this incident that happened. And I think sometimes if you cannot knock it, on the head straight away, or have more police visible presence, that is where your next lot of crime is coming from, that age group that is going on when they're older to possibly reoffend. It's going to give you more work. So the question is, can you give any reassurance if you do get a preset increase that it can be shared, not just in town centres or high crime areas, but a little bit coming out to other areas? Thank you, Chair.
It's not always a case of, the money being there to apply either. And I just want to add on to that, which, if you like, consistency is what we need. And I think also, particularly with the younger members of our community, where they commit an ASB, we don't want to criminalise anybody, but they commit an incident and it's caught on camera, it's flagged to the police have seen everything, we tell them who it is that's responsible, and we just ask that they send an officer around to knock on the door and say the right words. More often than not, policeman at the door. Certainly remember when I was a little bit younger, they never came to my door, of course, but it's that approach. And when it was reported through, the police would not take it up, which is inconsistent, because I know it is in other areas. unfortunately, within less than a month, we had such a serious ASB that there was violence created, and one of the young lads went into court, and two others, which we know were involved with the initial one. So it's that just initial, sometimes, consistency of saying, "Oh, knock on the door." You know, I mean, it used to be such a thing, and I don't know whether we've lost that. So it kind of deals with that in a different way, but. I've made a statement there, really, rather than a question. I appreciate that, and it's probably wrong of me.
No, but I think you both make a very good point. We know that the earlier you intervene, the less serious things get. And we've seen it absolutely with the Violence and Vulnerability Unit, focused on diverting, distracting, helping young people make better life choices, targeting at the 12 to 25-year-olds, but particularly focused on the 12 to 17-year-olds. The success has been phenomenal. Yeah, we have knife harm in this county, and we're talking crime here, not ASB stats, so I'm pretty confident we'll get. And it's also backed up by the NHS reports that we get. So an 18% reduction from the peak in knife crime, a 27% reduction in hospital admissions from knife crime. In Essex, over the M25, drug-driven knife crime is at an all-time high. It's up 18% in the last year, not down. So you're absolutely right. That's just a good way of agreeing with you to say that where we do it is right. What confidence can you have that we're going to take rural seriously? Only that we have changed things already. So we brought in the rural engagement team. That was a long time ago now, and it's not a step change that we've just recently done. So people have gotten used to its benefits and want to see more. That's natural. Yeah. We've brought in, on the Dengie and in Uttlesford, the community service, tri-service community officers, and they are reducing risk. Their job is to go around and advise people about how to prevent stuff from happening in the first place. And that helps. But if you have a particular issue, I mean, are we in Burnham or where are you having these issues?
Well, that particular one is in the co-op, and there's
in Burnham.
In Burnham, yeah, and the poor old ladies who do the till on a Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. And there was a councillor, an ex-councillor who's 86, stood up and told the lads to get out because they were freaking out all the customers. And I actually said to her, you shouldn't be doing that because you don't know if those teenagers...
They shouldn't.
Exactly, but it has been recognised now, and there is a little pattern. And that's what the only reason I raised it was when you said about having a pattern, it most probably will be responded to. But no, I've taken enough time, but I just wanted to raise that it can be knocked on the head if it can be... You know,
and you're right, and we need to deal with the specifics. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I don't think we've got any more questions. We need to move on anyway. So if there's any other burning questions that you wanted to ask, I'll draw it to a close. The recommendation is that the panel is invited to note the contents of the report, identifying any areas that require further clarification or comment, and I think we've done that. Is the recommendation to note the report agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 10, which is the budget setting process. There's various elements of this. Okay, so this is to provide the panel with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner's update on the medium-term financial strategy for 25-26, following the final plans for the neighbourhood policing guarantee. The recommendation is that the panel notes the report and considers a PFC invitation to participate in the process. This is the easy part, really. Well, they're all easy, aren't they? But you've seen the documentation. Effectively, we have to thank, again, I suggest, the Commissioner for offering to set up a workshop for us as panel members to effectively to dip in and out of, but you know there's always a requirement for core number of people. It's not really let's just say, appropriate sometimes if people don't turn up. That's definitely not the case, yeah? Because, of course, there's a lot of time goes in from the Commissioner's office to try and put us in the best position forward to agree. So please, we do know that not everybody can make every session. So first of all, thank you, Commissioner, for making the offers as happened in the past. Those who have attended in the past, I for one have always found it very, very helpful, and I've already mentioned it to other people or raised it with other people, and they said it was very, very helpful. Right, so that is the first element of it, is that we would like to take up the Commissioner's off on that one to group for the budget sessions. Are we in agreement to do that?
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Names in the frame? We can do that afterwards in the normal way, really, emails. Everything there. Okay, so we have accepted the invitation from the Commissioner. So the final element is the panel notes the opening position for the PFCC on this item, and will be based upon the updated MTFS meantime financial statement. That is, of course, we love our acronyms, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. What was it I called it last time round? Safe Essex. Anyway, doesn't matter. Following the final plan, and this is all following the final plans for the neighbourhood policing guarantee funding being confirmed with the Home Office. Yeah.
It simply confirms that we've done what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, but I know there's stuff going on at the moment as well, and we wish you every success.
Thank you.
Squeezing those pips. Okay, are the recommendations agreed? Panel. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 11, the decision report. We've got questions on the decision report. Not too many this time round, which is always good. Commissioner, would you like to say anything, or should we just go straight?
No, I think it's just the regular decision report, and it's your role to scrutinise what I've agreed.
Okay, so I appear to be the one asking most of the questions on this particular one, but again, if anybody's picked up on anything, I'll try and pick you up to bring you in. Some of these are very, very straightforward. Some are very public facing in terms of what they might be. So decision 1625, and this relates to Essex police support for the International Police Assistance Service, IPAS. Now, there's elements of this associated with this on the internet. I don't think it actually provides an awful lot of detail. So the question really is, how does this item benefit Essex taxpayers? How much funding has been spent on officers being involved with IPAS activities? I'm just saying in the last 3 years, but to give us an idea of what kind of costs is involved, but we need to understand what's in it for the taxpayer in Essex.
So, thank you for the question. We've not spent anything in the past because this is the first time we're doing it.
Right.
The benefits really are benefits in terms of officer capability. So them being involved in this means they will know more about international crime, they'll get better training on specialised programmes, they'll be exposed to more diverse policing methods. They'll build relationships with international law enforcement agencies. We work with the Eastern Region Serious Organised Crime Unit. We have, I think, nearly 100 officers in that, and they do that sort of thing as well, but this will build on that, and will mean that we are more knowledgeable about how to deal with things like human trafficking, drug smuggling and cybercrime, and we'll have a deeper insight into global security challenges. And of course, I'm sure you're aware that whilst all crime is local because the victims are somewhere and we need to look after them and support them. Some of it's also very international. And this is really going to help us be in a position to deal with it. That's the benefit to Essex, not necessarily specifically to the taxpayer, insofar as the Home Office will pay for this.
So are we putting money into this pot, or...?
The Home Office will pay for this.
Oh, let's move on. Thank you. The next question is 2625, and this is a contact management technology programme. And the question is, whilst appreciating associated public implementation expenditure is commercially or maybe commercially sensitive, what benefits do you expect? In other words, what are you hoping for out of this particular programme that, again...
I hope it's a bit more than I hope. My expectation is that doing this will make a substantial improvement. It should reduce demand on the 999 and 101 service by around 10%. Quicker call handling, faster incident resolution, reduced call handling times, better allocation of response, and actually have what we were talking about earlier in terms of knowing more about the individuals who are involved. So you'll get a better display of, more immediate and timely display of the victim or the perpetrator, who's involved, and what do we need to be doing about this? What risk do we need to assess on the way? And an enhanced ability for officers to self-serve, keep in touch about cases, and increased flexibility. So the aim is to achieve cashable benefits of around £3 million over the next 5 years. So this one does have a direct benefit to the taxpayer.
Efficiency, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Productivity gains, basically.
Thank you. You've seen that, then? You've seen that as background details? Perhaps in the future?
Thank you for the request.
Yeah. Okay, item 3025. This is the core grant allocations to CSPs. My question really is, and I think it's useful for everybody to understand, even though I know people on the panel know what the CSPs are about, others don't, and the public don't even know they exist. And they never know they exist. But anyway, the question is, what is the rationale behind the variation of the grant values to different CSPs? What drives that?
So there are obviously different grant funding streams to CSPs, specifically on the core grant. That's driven by population size primarily, but that's amended and refined for deprivation and for crime rates. Beyond that, there is an ability to bid for additional funding through various routes. So Community Safety Hub Fund, the Minerva Fund, the Community Safety Development Fund, and both national and local Safer Streets funds. So that's kind of where you end up with the big disparities, where it can be different years when different people bid for different things. So the one that sticks in my mind is that Castle Point and Rochford in the last year have got £1 million out of this. So that's a lot more than anybody else. But it doesn't necessarily... That was their year. That was their project this year. And if you go back in previous years, Colchester have had similar amounts of money.
And deserve it, probably. But so effectively then what you're saying is it depends whether they've applied for the grants in particular years that might be there, and they don't necessarily come out of the Commissioner's money. Do they come out of the Home Office or other areas?
So we get grant funding from the Home Office, but we also fund this locally as well, because it is making a big difference to the levels of crime. It's one of the key crime. Safer Essex does an awful lot of work in this, which you chair, don't you? Mm-hmm. And targeting the money in the right places. Places like Whittam have had a real benefit over time. Greenstead in Colchester, real benefit. I mean, I could list lots, but it isn't. It does vary a lot by year. It depends when that particular CSP comes forward with its bid. Most areas of the county have had a decent chunk of money at some point in the last 5 years. There are a couple where we really need to hold their hands and say, yeah, be a bit bolder, bid for a bit more, because actually you have got issues. And actually, interestingly, it's a little bit the rural areas have not been quite so smart at putting bids in. So if I can just encourage you to come forward and don't be so, unlike you, Wendy, to be backward in coming forward.
I'm not on it, otherwise I would have. Thank you for raising that, because I was just ready to put my hand up. So I will deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yes.
Chairman, if I could just on community safety partnerships, Commissioner, I think it's a really important point that's been landed there. As you're probably aware, Harlow Council with the Safer Harlow Partnership, we just announced significant funding for early intervention work, visible policing, and for technological innovation to support blue light operational requirements with Superintendent Tubbs, who's been doing a fantastic job in the West. As a result of lots of change happening in the county with local government reorganisation, community safety partnerships will come to the fore in terms of offering continuity during a time of great change. Would you agree with me, Commissioner, that it's now time to have serious conversations with local authorities like mine and across the county about how they can play a greater role working with you, given the local and national context for police funding that we've just spoken about?
The answer to that, Councillor Charles, is absolutely. I mean, it is. There's going to be a lot of turmoil across the county in terms of agencies changing their shape. The good news from my perspective is that police and fire and rescue are already devolved. So our shape is pretty much as it's going to be. May well be that we're lifted and dropped into a mayoral structure. That is, I think, inevitable sometime in the next 3 years. But it doesn't actually change the way things work. It's just a change in title. Whereas with the local authorities, you're going to be changing boundaries, people are going to be changing jobs, partners are going to be finding it harder to know who their new partner is, or maybe they're in a different role where they haven't known who the partners were in the past. All of those things are going to be really hard to work through. And my ask would be, please use us, please use the community safety partnerships for that. I guess when we know the shape of the unitaries, when we know how the unitaries are going to work, we will know how to shape the CSPs going forward. So, you know, if it's 3 unitaries, is that 3 CSPs? Well, that would be a CSP for 600,000–700,000 people. When I look at Lincolnshire, who've had 1 CSP, their CSP experience has not been as good as ours. Yeah. And they're effectively the same size as one of our unitaries would be. It's too big. So it may well be that we'll then need to have area councils within the unitaries looking at specific areas, whether that's Burnham and the Dengie, whether that's Harlow and its environments, or any of the other areas, and have a community safety partnership related to that. Because I really don't want to see CSPs get too remote. They're not as effective if they're too remote. They need to be dealing with the specific problems of a specific area. And we know as well that part of the success we've had has been looking at things as small as what we call lower level super output areas, which is the size of a couple of football fields. It's a particular part of a community where we may have particular problems, and doing the Safer Streets funding and the op-dial, op-grip interventions there, the clear hole builders that's now grown into, is really effective when you are that specific and that small. Trying to do it for an area which is 700,000 people, you've not targeted, and we know the targeting is effective.
I think there's another point out of that, if you don't mind me saying, which is I think the CSP needs to publicise what they do more. Apart from the fact the public really don't know CSPs exist, and they do good work, I'm sure, I'm not so sure that you're getting that message across. And whether you do it through through the Commissioner's office, through the newsletters that go out or whatever. But, you know, I do think you know, nobody's going to miss the CSPs public-wise, I fear, you know, because they kind of don't know they exist anyway. They're not told the good stuff that they do. Anyway, that's my...
And you're right, no CSP has a front desk.
Well, I don't think there isn't such a thing anymore, is there? The front desk, I assume you mean, is the publicity side of it, which, you know, I think it should probably reflect the fact of it is tied into what the Commissioner's put down in the plan, and then talk about it and say this is what the Commissioner's done, or whoever has allowed us to do collectively, and that might be the borough, district, or city that has, provided that or match funded some of the anyway, sorry, I looked at you all the time there, but there's more in this room. Anyway, that's that hobby horse, but it is important, I think. Yeah, if you don't talk about it, nobody's going to notice when it's gone. You know, what you do, that is. Right, I've lost the thread now, sorry about this. Were there any more questions on this particular area? Oh, me? Yeah, sorry. Me. Okay, so we got to the release of, 4025, release of restrictive covenant. I must say that some of you may have noticed, in fact, probably you all noticed, that the Chief Officer had to leave. He did tell me in advance and apologise for that. They've done well this year as well, over the last 12 months, yeah. So it's a shame that they left before saying, well done for your achievements, as we do with all of the achievements, whether it's the police or it is fire and rescue service. I remember when, it's a shame he's gone, but I remember when the Chief Officer was first appointed, and the statement was, how are you going to make Essex the best in the country? And they're working on it. They got the award last year, last year. Yeah. And we're doing very, very well there. And they do report how well they're doing. But it's we want, I would suggest, our police force and our fire and rescue service to be the best. We know they are, but we need to be able to, demonstrate that through and shout about it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So coming back to this, the point in hand, release of, the release of restricted covenants. This is 4025, which I may or may not have got the wrong end of the stick on. But are there any conditions attached to the 81K?
No.
Okay. It's a shame that, but then I know why. You want to explain?
No, it's all right.
Okay.
That was a closed question. Differently.
Some people can be cruel. Any other questions on this particular one? Otherwise, I'll go to decision 5125. Sorry, Councillor Rigby.
No, I was just...
No. He's getting excited. He can see the clock.
I can see the clock.
Okay, decision 5125, deed of easement. La Plata Grove. How will the sums feed back into policing in the borough? Sorry, this is Councillor Rigby's question, and I've just cheated.
The chairman has spoken eloquently for us both.
The answer to that is the income will be recorded as part of the capital receipts for the service and will feed back into the overall capital programme. It's not ring-fenced to any particular area.
Happy with that?
Happy with that.
And the final question on the decision report. No, not quite. Yeah, Councillor Ricky, you've got a question. And then Councillor Dobson as well.
Just a couple, if that's okay, Commissioner. So the first one is on 04624, the fire training project. It states that it's at a stage 3 RABA. Does that mean you have a planning application ready to submit for the facility now?
So the decision report specifically was to give approval to move to REBA Stage 4, which is the planning process, and to submit a planning application to Braintree District Council to deliver the new live fire training centre. It's on its way.
Thank you. And then just very quickly on 04725, and sorry for not giving you notice of this. Capitalised maintenance.
Yes.
I have a bit of an issue with the phrase of capitalised maintenance, because in my world, maintenance is OPEX and not capitalisable. Could you just explain how you can capitalise?
It's basically when it's major building works on a facility which themselves are going to have a useful life of 10, 15 years.
And that's what the extra £500,000 for. Okay, thank you.
Interesting question, that one. Right, Councillor Dobson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as a total newbie to this committee, and I apologise in advance if this question has been probably asked a million times before, it concerns the entries for borrowing. In my experience, borrowing tends to be expensive, and so I'm just really interested to know the rationale behind the borrowing. You've got one entry of 05525, but what I'm querying are the two entries for a 10 and a 12 million for just for 1 week. And I'm just really interested to know what the rationale is on that, please.
So we are in the territory of cash flow management.
Yeah.
So you're right, we have discussed it before, but you're also right, it's worth discussing again. It's an issue that merits scrutiny. And we have, when I got this job back in 2016, there was a plan to take on substantial long-term capital borrowing at that point in the coming year, and we didn't. We revised the plans for capital spending, and I'm really glad we did, because the financing period in between has been interesting, and if we'd spent all that money and had to pay the interest, we wouldn't have the 3,755 officers we have now. So it really matters, because there is a burden on the current budget of structural borrowing. The really good news is we're now, 9 and a bit years on, and we have not yet taken on any structural borrowing for Essex Police at all. So the only borrowing we're doing at the moment is cash flow borrowing. So the grants come in lumps. And one of the big ones is the pensions grant.
Okay.
But we pay people every month. So it just the way it flows, we quite rightly have to pay people on the due date. I would hate to think that we'd ever think of doing anything other than that. We have to pay our lighting bill and our diesel bill and all of those things as they come up. And we try and be a prompt payer. We don't want to be a bad customer. We don't actually want to be a public sector entity which is causing private sector businesses to have cash flow problems. We have got the ability to borrow at a AAA rating, at much lower rates than most of the rest of the economy. So if we need to do that, it needs to happen. It's a bit lumpy. The income comes in big chunks. So sometimes we can be 12 million out of pocket. We've just recently had to decide that we probably need to have a 10 million rolling facility to make sure that we have the assets available to be a professional in the marketplace and not start to have to deal with retail banking conditions and all that sort of stuff, which we don't want to do because it's more expensive, it's clunky, it's harder to manage, so it is cost effective to do that. But we won't be drawing it down until unless we actually have the cash flow gap to mean we have to do it. So that's where we are. I'm afraid the reality is that at some point we will have to take on some structural capital borrowing, particularly in the light of the spending review that we've just had, which had no, I repeat, no capital funding for police.
Okay. Yeah, I knew there was a good answer for it, but there just was. I was looking at the detail and I couldn't really.
It's a good and very relevant question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody. The recommendation is the panel invited to note the contents of the report, identifying any areas which we've found. Is the recommendation to note the report agreed, please? Thank you. We'll move on then to agenda item 12, which is the verbal update from the Commissioner, if there's anything left for him to say, that is. And I've never found an opportunity, well, an instance where the Commissioner hasn't added to something already said, but let's first.
But we have dealt with most of it.
Yes.
The things I prepared to talk about, your questions have already addressed. So I think just trying to keep it brief, one of the really important bits is the benefits of what we managed to agree last time we met back in the spring, and the 74 additional police officers going into neighbourhood policing teams. That will be a big boost to police visibility across the county. We had a lot of fun, didn't we? I think it was a few days that we were out and with your Deputy Chief Constable as well, touring the county and announcing and launching the teams in the various different town centres and areas, and was very, very well received. So that's 30 went into the north of the county, 24 into the south of the Thames estuary, and 20 into the west. In these terms, you classify as north, just to reassure you there. Not quite sure why you are, but there we are. We've also got a programme called Keeping Town Centres Safe This Summer. I think it's been rechristened actually in the near future, but that is a Home Secretary initiative to make sure that we are focused on what's called summer surge. When the silly season starts, people start to behave badly in town centres. We particularly feel it in Southend, but not only in Southend. And in the past we've had Op Union in place. We will be doing that again. But we won't only be doing it. We have put in Southend, and we put together a programme which we will be telling the Home Office about. Quite a cumbersome and clunky process. In the past, the Home Secretary hasn't taken a personal interest in the levels of crime in Southend or Canvey or the various different towns that we have. They appear to be wanting to at the moment. I think we're both a little bit sceptical, aren't we, that the Home Secretary is going to spend her time leafing through and comparing what's happening in Burnham with what's happening in Bridlington. But maybe they will. Maybe that's the way that they want to spend their time. I think it's very relevant to make sure that we have got a good programme in place to deal with the crime surge we see every summer. And that delivery period is going to be from the 30th of this month until the end of September, and it will run alongside the hotspot policing programme and our usual summer policing plans for Southend and for Clapton. We've dealt with all of the stuff about the CSR apart from fire and rescue, and again it's a shame that the Chief Fire Officer, I know he had to go at 4, I thought we might just have got there sort of 15 minutes ago. We didn't quite make it, did we? But it is worth bringing to your attention that the Green Book, the Chancellor, the Home Secretary, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Housing and Local Government said nothing about fire and rescue in the spending review. Not one word. We had put in a submission for fire and rescue. We'd asked for 540 million nationally for fire and rescue over the 3 years. MHCRG funding in total does not go up by that amount. But there has been no opportunity, no response to a request for opportunity to have a discussion on that with MHCLG. As far as I got with the officials in Whitehall was, you'll have to wait till December. That's disappointing.
Made worse by the fact, of course, that Fire and Rescue Service, their money is not ring-fenced. We're lucky in Essex because we've got a commissioner to blame if that's, let's just say, moved away. Yeah, but there are many other counties where reserves have all gone. And they've gone into helping out the funding for the districts, boroughs and areas themselves. Yeah. So I think that's a really difficult area. If it's not being ring-fenced, then it's going to be abused. There's always that opportunity, and I'm glad that we live in Essex, where, as I say, we've got the commissioner looking out for that, and then we challenge the commissioner: are they getting a fair share of the money to carry out their services within the constraints, of course, of what's given. So thank you for that, but as I say, it's worth bearing in mind. Perhaps come back in a different way in a moment, John, when I deal with it. So, where are we? Well, thank you, Commissioner. Is the panel content to note the update?
No.
Hold tight.
Chairman, just on a completely lighter note, I was grateful for the walkabout in Harlow, and it was great to learn the Chief Constable's favoured Haribo that fueled his walkabout. We were very grateful to him telling the Sugar Rush. Thank you, Chairman.
Actually,
That fussy. He does like the other ones.
That's a very good point, actually, in terms of getting around the community, etc. That yesterday was the Commissioners' conference, very well attended, probably one of the best I've been to. In terms of policing, etc. It was an interesting day. Thank you, Commissioner, for that. Jane was excellent, as always, in terms of, a true deputy who's now looking for another job, having abused the situation with the Commissioner, but he's not. No, they didn't sound well, did he? Should have been.
It was very cheeky, but she got away with it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Again.
Always cheeky.
It was excellent. Well, the organisation was excellent. The whole thing was good. But more importantly, I think there was some very, very good indications of partner working that came forward. And that was what it was all about. A few of us attended, a few of the panel members attended. I think it would always be good if there was more. So perhaps next time round, if you're able to make it, it's well worth it. Thank you, Commissioner. Right, so shall we move on to the annual report? This is our annual report, the panel's annual report. You've all seen a copy of it, all put together by Sophie, and I didn't do anything on it. Why should I? It's perfect. When it's perfect, it doesn't need doing, does it? It does show for the new members just how much we actually achieve in the year if we're doing things right, and I believe we are. So if you've read the report, unless there are any questions, which I don't see there are any. So the recommendation the panel receive and note the panel's annual report for the year. Can I take that as general? And the panel review the forward work plan. This is the important bit, really, and identify any other business it would like to consider. We do this every time now, so you don't need to think you're going to do it once and you've missed it. Yeah, but if there's anything that you'd like us to consider going forward, now's the time for this period. You'll get another go at it in July. Forward plan. No? Okay. So. Can we therefore, is the recommendation to note the report agreed, which I think we said yes, and any items to add to the forward plan which is not at this stage? Is that correct? Have I? Yeah. Thank you. Right, okay. Every year we submit to the Home Office. Is it twice a year we submit our money to the Home Office, which takes into account our expenditure, and then we are, if you like, locked in by how much we can claim. We've never got to the maximum amount, so we don't know what happens if we do more than we're actually going to get paid for. However, you've got details within the report about how the money is spent. My one comment is that I've asked in future years that we bring more detail to it. Yeah, by that what I mean is we're actually missing the detail that actually is submitted to the Home Office. things like training, for example, you can't pick that out of that report, but we do training, and I think it's appropriate, and I think it's an example that every year we hold a training session for the panel members, new and and if you like more established, and that's an important thing. Well, if I was a member of the public, I'll be saying, so what training do you get on this? What surprises me, how little training there is in some of the public sector areas. That is certainly talked about. I hope it exists, but it's not really talked about. So I've asked for that to be an addition in future years. Just give us more of a snapshot of what is sent to the Home Office, and therefore they know what to do. They do look at these things, they compare it the right way across. I know that for a fact from discussions I have with them on a one-to-one. So, are we all in agreement with the report, subject to what I've just said, that sign it off?
Agree.
Thank you. Okay, that's the grant. That's the grant claim, isn't it? I've gone over 2 pages. So the next item is the National Association, and I'll try and be very brief on this one. There's no reason for me not to be. The May elections makes changes. Sorry, the National Association of Police, Fire and Crime Panel was set up in 2017-18, and it was by the panel for the panel. It doesn't get any funding anywhere, so it doesn't. It's not a drain on the public purse in any way. But it's 4 panels, and therefore the panels work together, and if they want something doing, they need to do it themselves effectively. Yeah, but there were 40 out of 41 potential panels out there. And within that, there's an executive committee which is formed, and they are voted on each year in November. Normally it's a November AGM. In fact, it is by constitution. It has to be held in November. Right, okay, so the May elections had quite a significant effect right the way across the UK. You don't need telling that, you know. But what it did do for the National Association is it meant that we were losing some of the executive members that we've had. In fact, we've lost actually only 1 exec member, but as well as having the exec committee, we also invite any observer that wants to come along. They can attend, they can have their say. In fact, the only part that you can't play is if there is a vote, that they don't have a vote. Yeah, but other than that, everybody's welcome. So we lost our long-standing member from Northampton. We also lost an observer from West Midlands and an observer from Staffordshire. Now, why this is significant as well is the fact that as is Essex, Northampton and Staffordshire were fire responsibility as well. So there's only Essex, last man standing, I suppose, really, to fly the flag for what the Commissioner has done back in 2018, isn't it? I.e. taking the responsibilities for fire and rescue. Right, so there will be a note going out fairly shortly to all the panels stating the position and asking for whether anybody would like to fill the 1 vacancy. 2 is a...
2 vacancies.
Okay, thanks. 2 vacancies, yeah, and then the exec will then deal with it, and then everybody comes up to to either remain on or not in November, as I've already said. Right, okay, so. There was things that have occurred, apart from we sort of discussed things with the Home Office and the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. One of the members at our last meeting asked whether there was any learning to be done by looking at the resource info PCCs. In other words, comparing Essex, say, with Northamptonshire and seeing whether there's anything that was useful to learn between. And this is all to do with the resourcing numbers. That report hopefully will be finished by the end of this month. But it's actually very much a snapshot in time report. There's no real conclusion you can bring to it of a fruitful nature, other than the fact it really is down to the Commissioner to decide how many people are in his or hers OPCC. And that sounds fairly straightforward, but it isn't, because different OPCCs either contract in elements or do it themselves, and therefore the staffing level goes up. Also, it should match the priorities you would expect. And some of the priorities, you've got some OPCs with a stated priority of maybe 3 or 4 priorities, and others are 10 or 11. But then if you scratch the surface on that, you find the 3 or 4 has then got sort of themes, rather than priorities. So it really is not a clear picture. However, all data is useful, and it just shows that, there's no good practice by having X number or Y number. And we've also compared OPCCs with the number of population, the population number that they're serving as well, see if there's anything significant there. We immediately put to one side Greater London. They've got 8.8 million that we're looking at. We've got 1.89 million, and the number of people in the OPCC, well, after the 4th or 5th page, I gave up counting. So take them out of it, really. They skew the numbers. Okay, that'll be out at the end of the month, and all panels will be sent that, as well as other areas. And the Home Office contacted us and asked whether we, as a panel, would agreed to being interviewed by the Home Office. And this is the Essex panel, but right the way across the piece, this is a subject that's come across at the National Association. All good stuff, nothing to be concerned about. In essence, they're sort of indicating where things are going or not going. Most of the good stuff has been put on hold, stalled, usual stuff. When the new government comes in, they want time to look at things, put their stamp on it, rebrand it and put it out there, or not, as the case may be. But they were particularly keen to know how commissioners respond to questioning and challenge. They also wanted to know about training, in particular. How do you do your training? What do you do? Who you use? And I thought that was significant. We've got a good track record of that. So, and they did spend quite some time, didn't they? Really, because Frankie and I met with them. They spent some time on that. Is there anything you'd like to add on that particular one? The reason I bring it up under here, by the way, is because it's happening to selected panels across the country.
I just thought it was a useful couple of hours just understanding or getting across some of our points to some of the needs at the Home Office. I think they found it quite useful speaking to us too, just getting outside of how we interact with the commissioners from a panel perspective too. I think they've probably taken away some very useful information that they will probably share with other panels, and we'll work into how other panels work with other entities. So on the whole, I think it was a very worthwhile session for us.
Good. We flew the flag, I think, yeah. We know we're the best panel in England and Wales, but, sometimes you just got to keep repeating that, don't you? And nobody in this room is going to disagree with us, are they? No. So we'll move on from that one. So, is the panel content to note the update that I've just given? Thank you. We've got the date of the next meeting is
Tuesday the 22nd of July.
Okay, Tuesday 22nd. So, if that's noted, then there were no urgent business that I'm aware of. So, with that, unless there are any final questions or queries, I'd like to say safe trip back. Almost the end of the week.